Mr. Speaker, the young people of this country are proud to be Canadians. They're proud to see a future from coast to coast to coast in this country. The young people of this country have a bright future.
It is too bad that that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears all of those poor students stuck in that room.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you.
Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister made a very depressing speech to Canada's youth. He said they would have to make more sacrifices. More sacrifices. After 10 Liberal years that doubled the cost of housing and drove out the possibility that youth could own their own home. After the sacrifice of their jobs, with the worst employment numbers since the 1990s, after the sacrifice of a lifelong of shouldering high debt. Young people need hope, jobs, and homes. Why won't the Prime Minister reverse his disastrous decade of policies so that we can restore that hope?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Speaker, I had the honour of presenting red seals to 3 new apprentices of the IBEW in Local 230, Victoria, BC. Mr. Speaker, they're proud of what they accomplished. They're optimistic about the future because, Mr. Speaker, we are going to put them to work. Mr. Speaker, we're going to build homes. We're building major infrastructure projects in the national interest. Thousands of jobs, thousands of opportunities for apprenticeship. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives come to this House and talk Canada down every day, we're going to be supporting workers who are building Canada up.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
3 apprentices, Mr. Speaker. That does not account for the countless job losses, the highest jobless rate in 30 years outside of COVID caused by this government. Nor does it account for the doubling of housing costs that 80% of young people believe they will never be able to afford a home. But yet the Prime Minister tells our youth that they have to sacrifice even more. All he offers is more costs, more debt, and more despair when Canadians actually need is more homes, more jobs, and more hope. Why won't he introduce an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Every day, the Conservatives come to this House and talk down the Canadian economy. We are supporting our workers, Mr. Speaker. We are going to build, Mr. Speaker. Build bold. Build now with Canadian lumber, with Canadian steel, Canadian unionized worker, Mr. Speaker. We are defending our workers, Mr. Speaker. We'll be there for Canada. I hope the Conservatives join us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, apparently nobody over there watched the depressing, miserable, hopeless speech the Prime Minister gave to Canadian youth yesterday. He said that Canadian youth need to sacrifice more, Mr. Speaker, when in fact quite the opposite is true. Mr. Speaker, the youth of this country have sacrificed enough. They can't afford homes, they can't get jobs, and now they have a generational lifetime of debt to shoulder. What Canadian youth need is homes, jobs, and hope. Yesterday, I provided the Prime Minister with a plan to do it. Will he put that hopeful plan in his budget?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
The only person who's miserable when the Prime Minister speaks, Mr. Speaker, is the Leader of the Opposition. What the Prime Minister is talking about is spending less and investing more. Investing in what? In careers for young people, in building major national projects, in being a technology leader in the world today with Premier Ford leading the world in small modular nuclear reactors. Mr. Speaker, the young people of this country are proud to be Canadians. They're proud to see a future from coast to coast to coast in this country. The young people of this country have a bright future.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It is too bad that that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears all of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that is built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, you can be sure we are going to introduce a budget. The question is whether the Leader of the Opposition is going to support that budget, because here's what that budget's going to do. It's going to give young people all over this country the ability to stand up and say, that's where my future lies, in Canada, in skilled trades, in technology, in the professions, in careers that are going to give me and my family hope, a home, a community, a job, a future, the best country in the world. Let's build Canada.
River.
Mr. Speaker, never before has a government spent so much and delivered so little. The latest example, the CRA. Under these Liberals, the CRA's budget increased by a staggering 70%, yet according to the Auditor General, the CRA has failed to meet its service standard a shocking 95% of the time. So how is it possible that every time the Liberals spend more, Canadians get less?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. We accept the Auditor General's report, and we will learn from that. But let me be very clear. There was 167 calls made by the Auditor General. The CRA has made 100,000 calls, and we have upwards of 90% calls answered accurately. We will improve. We will continue to learn. But, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to provide a CRA that is responsive to Canadians. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, not only did the CRA fail to meet its service standard 95% of the time, last year 8.6 million calls to the CRA went unanswered, and if you were lucky enough to get through, the CRA gave wrong information 83% of the time. And what is the Liberal solution? Increase the CRA's budget even more. You can't make this stuff up. Have these Liberals learned absolutely nothing after 10 years of failure?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I'm right here. Canadians deserve timely and accurate service from the CRA. There's no question about that. But, Mr. Speaker, we have good news. We have good news. We've instituted a 100-day plan. Service levels and access are up. We're upwards of 83% of calls answered within 15 minutes. Mr. Speaker, we are laser focused on the CRA delivering good service for Canadians, and that is what we are going to do. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The Prime Minister told young Canadians that there would be more sacrifices in their future. Young people are already facing a bleak future because of Liberal policies, exploding housing and food prices, historic highs in unemployment. Mr. Speaker, past generations sacrificed to make life better for their children. But now young people are being told to sacrifice their future because of elite Liberal policies. Mr. Speaker, will Liberals stop breaking their promises and restore hope for the future of this country?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, you know what youth of this country want? They want a leader that doesn't spin conspiracy theories, attack democratic institutions, and suggest other leaders be jailed. Mr. Speaker, on November 4th, we're going to table a generational budget. We're going to invest in Canada. We're going to build Canada. I suggest the leader opposite sacrifices ego, put the rhetoric aside, and help us build Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, respectfully, that nonsense answer obviously had nothing to do with the question. And when we're talking about youth unemployment, I think it's time for the Liberals to sacrifice their tired talking points and actually get serious about addressing this problem. Now, last week we introduced the Conservative Youth Jobs Plan to unleash the economy, fix immigration, fix training, and build homes where the jobs are. So instead of preaching sacrifice, why don't the Liberals actually propose a youth jobs plan? Better yet, why don't they simply adopt ours?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives are in damage control mode, we're in build mode. On November 4th, we're going to table a generational budget. We're going to invest in Canada. We're going to build at a scale not seen since the Second World War. We're going to invest in infrastructure, national projects. Mr. Speaker, we believe in Canada. We will build Canada's economy and the strongest economy in the G7. I ask the party opposite to come out of the shadows, support our budget. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill South.
Yesterday, this Liberal Prime Minister told a room full of students that they're going to have to make some sacrifices. Well, young people have already sacrificed enough over the last 10 years. They've sacrificed by paying skyrocketing food costs. They've sacrificed with an entire summer without jobs because Liberal job-killing policies have driven youth unemployment to recessionary levels. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership because the Liberals created the worst housing crisis ever. And last month, rents were up another 4.8% nationally. Canadians shouldn't have to sacrifice for Liberal failures. When will the Liberals stop doubling down on the same failed policies, get spending under control so young Canadians can finally afford to buy homes?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Boy, Mr. Speaker, that speech really freaked out the Conservatives, didn't it? Because it was all about ambition. It was about investing in ourselves. It was about building major projects. It was about the project that Prime Minister Carney announced with Premier Ford, that the Prime Minister...
I don't think I even need to say it. I think everyone knows. But the member may go ahead. Not from the top.
Mr. Speaker, that speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech, today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister told a room full of students that they're going to have to make sacrifices, but after 10 long years of failed Liberal policies they already have, they've sacrificed their dream of owning a home, sacrificed their dream of starting a family because they cannot afford it. They have watched food prices skyrocket, and housing starts in Toronto at a 30-year low. Canada has everything it needs to thrive, but it's failing because of their policies. Will the Liberals stop breaking their promises and get their spending out of control so young Canadians can finally afford to dream?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the youth in my riding are dreaming, and not only that, they're working, and they're entering the workforce in extraordinary ways. Let me talk about the young welder that I met at Thunder Bay Hydraulics just a few weeks ago, who approached me the other day and said that because of the programs that the province and the federal government work together on to ensure she had work-integrated learning, she was now a welder with that company. Mr. Speaker, we're investing in jobs, we're investing in youth. Every time we look across the aisle, these guys are voting against the interests of youth. It's very rich for them to talk about youth.
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister told a room full of students that they have to make sacrifices. Mr. Speaker, students and young people in this country have already sacrificed enough to these Liberals. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership. They've paid the price at the pump and for the cost of food. They've spent summers without jobs. Now the Liberals get up and their big achievement is 3 new apprenticeship Red Seals? You gotta be kidding me. Canadians have sacrificed enough over the last 10 years. They shouldn't have to sacrifice more for these Liberal failures. Will the Liberals get their spending under control in the November 4th budget and restore the promise of hope for young Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Canadians vividly remember, young Canadians vividly remember when the leader of the opposition, the Conservative leader, stood up and voted against removing interest off Canada's student loans, saving young Canadians thousands of dollars every year, Mr. Speaker. This new government will always stand up for young Canadians. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that we will double non-U.S. exports by $300 billion. That means thousands of new opportunities for young Canadians producing the goods that the world wants to buy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just told a room full of young Canadians that they're going to have to make sacrifices. Well, after 10 years of the Liberal government, they've already had to sacrifice the dream of owning a home. They've already had to sacrifice their modest expectations of living in a safe community. They've already had to sacrifice an economy where the cost of living is manageable and good-paying jobs are easy to find. So my question for the Prime Minister is, when he made these comments, what additional sacrifices for young Canadians did he have in mind?
Good job. Secretary of State for Sport.
What the leader of the Conservatives doesn't seem to get is that Canadians use hope and hard work and sacrifice every single day to build up our country and our communities. But when the failed former MP from Carleton lost his seat, Mr. Speaker, he didn't have to make any sacrifices or be accountable. He didn't even learn a lesson clearly. But when his constituents fired him, he should have maybe paused and reflected a little bit. But since he didn't lose his home in taxpayer-funded non-market housing, I guess that's why he continued to deny it to millions of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Maybe that failed and flailing Conservative leader should join some students in a class, because it seems like 20 years in this House, after 20 years in this House, he can learn a thing or two about hard work.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
I guess, Mr. Speaker, one of the things we also have to sacrifice are answers in question period. After 10 years of Liberal government, we've had a cost of living crisis. We've had an addictions crisis that's left 50,000 Canadians, mainly young Canadians, dead from drug overdoses. And now we have a growing youth jobs crisis, with youth unemployment surging to 14.7%, the highest level in 15 years. If young Canadians could barely afford to put a roof over their head and food on their table when they are working, how are they going to be able to afford it when they're out of a job?
Good job. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
If we find it a little bit rich that the Conservative Party is going to stand up and talk about youth when they consistently vote against the measures that this government has introduced that actually matter to young Canadians in this country. They voted against budget measures that actually support young skilled trade workers. They voted against the Canada Child Benefit. They vote against national school food programs. They vote against programs that are ensuring dental programs, Canada Housing Benefit. We have a plan to build up this country. We have a plan to build major national projects. There is a bright and hopeful future for youth in this country, notwithstanding the fact that Conservatives don't want to join us in those measures to make it happen, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for York, Durham.
Well, Mr. Speaker, despite all these programs, the Prime Minister still went to students yesterday and gave them a message: you must sacrifice more. Well, the next generation has sacrificed enough. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership. They've sacrificed the dream of starting a family. He might as well have said, let them eat cake. Well, then the next generation has sacrificed enough after 10 years. Will the Prime Minister reverse course, get his spending under control so that the next generation of young Canadians can afford to feed themselves and own a home?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, our new government is supporting young Canadians with the skills and opportunities they need to build their futures. That's why when the Prime Minister announced on campus just yesterday that we'll double Canada's non-U.S. exports over the next decade, it mattered. We're talking about 2/3 of our economy driven by international trade. It means millions of jobs and more careers in communities across Canada producing the goods that the world wants to buy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for York Durham.
The only thing this government is doubling is the debt that the next generation will have to pay. So-called generational investment, that is just generational debt and generational inequality. In fact, Habitat for Humanity now says 70% of Canadians say owning a home is impossible. And for those that rent, they saw a 5% increase year over year, Mr. Speaker. That is the result of Liberal policies. Will the Prime Minister sacrifice his policies rather than the future of the next generation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, when we talk about making generational investments in our upcoming budget, it's because we believe on this side of the House that youth and young people are the drivers of our future economic growth, and we have a responsible plan to ensure that they have the skills and opportunities to succeed. It builds on the work that we're doing to support apprenticeships and Red Seal trades, co-ops, and access to post-secondary education and training. But most importantly, we're creating thousands of new career-starting jobs, investing in major projects, and making it more affordable for young people to buy a home. Housing starts, construction, investment, and wages are up. This is part of our plan. We've got more to do.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister's job is to keep Canadians safe. Yet just today we learned that 32,000 foreign nationals have warrants pending their deportation. That means they are lost. They are wanted. 32,000 people, and the minister doesn't know where they are. We have him on secret recording saying his gun confiscation won't work. We have crime absolutely skyrocketing, and now he's lost 32,000 foreign nationals. So the question is this, Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister fire this Public Safety Minister for failing to keep Canadians safe?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the safety and security of Canadians is the first and most primary responsibility of this government. That's what we've taken very important measures in order to ensure the safety and security of Canadians, including having the highest levels of removals in a decade. Over 20,000 people will be removed from Canada for being here improperly, Mr. Speaker. That's what we introduced, bail reform and sentencing reform just this afternoon. That's what we have, Bill C-12, that's going through the House. I encourage the party opposition to support these measures in order to keep Canadians even more safer, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Spadina Harbourfront.
Speaker, this government was elected with a decisive mandate to keep violent repeat offenders off our streets. While the Leader of the Opposition was attacking the brave men and women of the RCMP, calling them despicable, the Minister of Justice was working with provinces, territories, and law enforcement to develop solutions-focused bail and sentencing reforms. Today, the Minister has tabled Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. Can the Minister explain how this bill will ensure the safety of our communities and keep dangerous offenders behind bars?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, there is not a less credible voice when it comes to criminal justice reform than the Leader of the Opposition. In the past few weeks, he has called the RCMP despicable. He has attacked Crown prosecutors, and he has suggested his political opponents should be jailed. The legislation we tabled today will make it harder to get bail for violent repeat offenders and will strengthen sentence for serious criminals. Mr. Speaker, criminal justice reform demands a conversation that would engage adults in the rooms. The Conservatives have a leadership review coming up. I invite them to choose one.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Some NL residents finding it hard to survive as grocery prices continue to rise. That's the headline from CBC today. They go on to say that the price of food in Newfoundland and Labrador is up 4% since last September. Beef leads the way, up 20%. This Liberal Prime Minister said he would be judged by the prices Canadians pay at the grocery store. So will he get his inflationary deficits under control so that Canadians can afford to put food on the table? That's a good question.
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to remind my opposition colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador that Newfoundland and Labrador was the first province in Canada to sign on to the Food School program. The Conservative Party was the first party in Canada to not vote for that program. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians value this program. Moms, parents, school educators know what this program means. This is affordability, just as the suite of other programs are affordability, and this member voted against every one of them.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Mr. Speaker, could you have a more heartless response than from the regional minister from Newfoundland and Labrador, no less, where people are known to have a good heart? That minister knows full well that the school lunch program that they created is garbage. It hasn't fed one child in Canada. Mr. Speaker, she also knows that her hidden taxes from the
To the member, continue, please.
Mr. Speaker, could you have a more heartless response than from the regional minister from Newfoundland and Labrador, no less, where folks are known to have a good heart? That minister knows full well that that school lunch program that they created hasn't fed one Canadian child. And Mr. Speaker,
Time's up. Time's up. Time's up. I'm sorry. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, while the colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador in the opposition wants to talk down programs, humiliate Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and all Canadians, I will reassure Canadians the school food program is feeding children. It's saving families up to $800 a year. This is policies that work. I will always stand for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Parents are struggling to secure healthy food for their families because of this Liberal government's out-of-control spending, skyrocketing food inflation up again 4%. Liberal food taxes and regulations don't show up on their receipts, but Canadians feel them every time they shop for groceries. The Prime Minister said he would be judged by the prices Canadians pay at the grocery store. If he's truly the astute economist he claims he is, why isn't he getting his inflationary deficits and hidden grocery taxes under control so Canadians can afford to feed their families?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here we go again with the imaginary taxes. They don't show up on receipts because they're not actually there. So Canadians know that. They know how to read a receipt, Mr. Speaker. But just picking up on the previous question, I just want to remind people about how much good this school nutrition program is doing all across Canada, including, as my colleague mentioned, providing dignity to families all across this country so that their kids can get good nutrition in school, feeding healthy brains, and it's saving families about $800 a year. Mr. Speaker, as a former lunchroom monitor, there's nothing more painful than watching a child who doesn't have a lunch, whether they